Well, I pride myself on really not being at a loss for words all that much, but here we are on a Thursday night, just a touch before 9 o'clock Pacific. Eddie Paskal here in the fifth quarter with my man Jason Fitz. And Fitz, where to begin, my friend? Let's just do this. I'm having a hard time trying to wrap my mind around this. I know you are trying to wrap your mind around this and perhaps having a little more success than I am. How did this happen? What happened over the past, I don't even want to say like 3 hours. What happened over the last 45 minutes, my friend?
Yeah, this is just the theme of this year, right? So, peek behind the curtain. I'm hosting SportsCenter on Snapchat tonight, which is out there tomorrow.
Great plug.
And thank you. And as I was I had the script written. It was written, and we were just waiting for the game to sort of play out so we could put some highlights in and be good to go. That's sort of what you do. You write 80% of the game. And when the Rams scored the first of the last two touchdowns in the final 4 minutes, I looked at my producer and I said, nope, I've got to delete everything. We're going to have to rewrite this script. You could feel it. And, context, I asked our great team at Stats and Info to look up some information. The Raiders now become only the fourth team ever to blow 4 games in the same season where they led by at least 13 points. The last time that happened was 1998. In fact, the Raiders are 2-4 in such games this year. The rest of the NFL is 97, 15, and 1. The Raiders have won 33% of the games that they've had at least a 13-point game in. The rest of the league wins 85%. Like, the meltdown is part of the culture of this football team this year.
And you know what's wild, too? When we talk about kind of, the DNA of this team and everything we've seen now over the past, 13, 14 weeks, and I think the frustrating thing for me is we've seen this movie now multiple times. And perhaps the most frustrating part of this movie is the first 2 acts are awesome. Let us not forget that a few hours ago when this game kicked off, we were seeing Davante Adams have arguably one of the most incredible catches of 2022, hand in his face. Josh Jacobs was rolling, Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, the tandem, were flying around. Life was good. Raiders fans were having the time of their life in Los Angeles at SoFi, and then it ends like this. And unfortunately, we've seen this happen before, and I think the hardest part for me, Fitz, is trying to rationalize, trying to find some reason that this keeps happening, and I'm not doing a very good job of it.
Today, it felt like in the second half, the tanks were empty. Offensively and defensively. That drive, the first touchdown in the fourth quarter, I'm trying to pull it back up here to see how long that drive was, but that drive was incredible. The defense was out on the field for what felt like absolutely forever, right? So once you've got a drive that's that long that results in a touchdown, you've got it.
I got it for you. It was 11. Oh, excuse me. Hang on. Yeah, it was 11 plays. 31 yards, 5.5 minutes.
So the Rams touchdown drive that I have here was our Stats and Info group says Rams touchdown lasted 9 minutes and 1 second.
Oh, hang on. I think
9 minutes.
You're right. Yep, sorry. Looking at the wrong one. You are correct.
Okay. We got 9 minutes and 1 second. That's
you're right.
The 6 9-minute drive for the Rams under Sean McVay, and the second time this year. When you are on the field for that long, and then the offense turns around and can't get that last yard. They just couldn't get the last yard. Like, one of the hardest parts is that now you've got a gas defense and an offense that's been gone for so long that they just feel like they don't have any rhythm. And it felt like the play calling and everything just felt out of sync right there. So then all of a sudden you're putting your defense right back on the field. And I thought our guy, AJ Cole, friend of the show.
Yep.
I thought that kick that got them all the way back to the 2-yard line was going to be the saving grace, but it wasn't. It was a gas defense that made stupid mistakes.
Now, let's just level set. You're 100% right. Where I'm looking at that drive now, I've secured my notes, Fitz. The Rams go 17 plays, 75 yards, just over 9 minutes, like you said. And hindsight being 2020 now, right? The Raiders punt on 4th and 1, and it was a debate that we were having in the studio. Do you punt or do you go for it? Resident special teams guy said, hey, you have one of the best punters in the NFL. Punt that thing away. In hindsight still, I think Josh McDaniels made the right call there. It was just everything after that really kind of fell apart.
Come on. Like, shoes on the other foot game here. If your favorite team, whether it's the Raiders or anybody else, has to go 98 yards in a minute and 45 seconds with no touchdowns, and you need a touchdown to win, or no timeouts, I should say, and you need a touchdown to win, you're going to win that game. The only other time we've seen what happened today was last week, week 17, according to our stats and info group at ESPN. Tom Brady was the last quarterback to go over 90 yards to get a game-winning touchdown with no timeouts remaining. Like Baker Mayfield became Tom Brady today. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and I know that it's going to get lost in all of this, and you and I both know who the audience for this show is, but you gotta tip your hat to Baker Mayfield, man. A dude that literally came in off the bench in the cold, arrived in LA 2 days ago, and then does this. Take the fact out that he took down the Raiders this evening. I mean, what he did was pretty darn impressive.
100%, especially in the fourth quarter. They did a smart job, and I thought Sean McVay did a nice job from the outset of ensuring that there was a lot of play action. I think the Raiders expected a run-heavy game plan, and then the Rams opened it up. The Raiders didn't look ready for that. And then when you combine it with the one, like you're going to have that one drive every once in a while in the game. The problem is you just couldn't rebound. You couldn't get enough gas back in the tank. And, I think we all watched that. Now, one of the things you and I have talked about in previous weeks is that this defense comes out with so much fire early on, but sometimes in the fourth quarter, it looks like they've used all their turbo button, as I always say, and it felt like as this game was winding down, but Max Crosby was there and just couldn't make the play. Then when he did make the play, Tillery makes a regrettable decision to knock the ball out of the quarterback's hands, completely unnecessary. That takes it from being second and 25, second and 20. It takes it from that to being an automatic first down 15 yards further up the field. Like the number of mistakes that factored into this. Cleve Furl jumping off sides on a punt, like that over and over again, this team has played disciplined football for the majority of this season. In the third and fourth quarter, it all fell apart today.
And I think going back to even that first half, Fitz, there was a moment, and we had that the interception that DC threw in the end zone in the first half, and the Rams aren't able to take advantage at that point on the ensuing drive. But that's one that we all looked around the studio and said, remember this moment, right? Because it has felt like all throughout 2022, Fitz, maybe excluding the past 3 weeks, the Raiders have had their opportunities to finish games, to put teams away early. Now, if Derek is able to, manufacture a touchdown in that situation, you're going into halftime up 22-3 against a quarterback that has 2 days of experience in the playbook. And with all due respect to the Rams, right? And obviously they handled business this evening. You will take that scenario if you're a Raiders fan 100 times out of 100, 20-3 against a quarterback who is learning on the fly, against a decimated roster, throwing to guys outside of Tutu Atwell that most NFL fans probably don't know very well. So you look at the missed opportunities, and I know the Rams weren't able to put points on the board in that ensuing possession, but those are the moments. That's 2022 in a nutshell, right? You have the opportunity to finish it. You have the chance to say, we're the biggest, baddest dogs on Thursday Night Football, and they unfortunately just can't get it done.
Yeah, and I would also add the field goal that you settled for to makes it 13-3.
Yep.
Like this game was 10-3 and it looked like it could go 17-3. And then it was 13-3 and it looked like it could go 23. And you think about the number of little that's one of the interesting things about this year. The number of times that 3rd and 3 has ended up with 4th and 2, 4th and 3, 4th and 4, just out of range of anyone feeling comfortable, even from an analytics standpoint, of trying to push the meter and go for it. And all of a sudden you end up giving the ball back. And we all know that there are issues on the defensive side of the football that the team has tried to mask through. There have been issues with the offensive line some weeks. Derek Carr under more pressure this week than he has. Percentage-wise, he faced more pressure on percentage of dropbacks than any game in his career, which speaks to the fact that Bars was out in the first half. And I think that made a huge difference to where the Raiders have had a ton of success up the gut. All of these things played a part in a short week of just trying to figure out how to make the most of it. And look, it's a short week for the Rams too. The Rams are decimated too. And by the way, the Rams are not good. Like I'll say this loudly. Same thing I said after the Saints game. Like, no apologies. The Saints are a bad football team that smacked the Raiders. The Rams are a bad football team that beat the Raiders today. And they beat the Raiders because the Raiders beat themselves in the fourth quarter.
I think you hit the nail on the head. The Raiders beat themselves today. And with all due respect to the Rams, right? I mean, you are what you are in this league. The Rams and Baker Mayfield earned a win tonight, but they had a ton of help from the guys in silver and black. And to me, Fitz, I go back and I'm thinking about the game, and once again, we talk about constant themes of 2022. The Raiders this evening were 1 for 4 in the red zone. 1 for 4, 25%. On the other side of things, the Rams are 1 for 1, right? And I know you only get your one chance down there, but they took full advantage of it. And to me, make me smarter. And this is one thing I've always appreciated about you, is that you find people that are smarter than you, X's and O's wise, people that can educate you, ergo educate me and educate the people that listen to the show. How do we get better in the red? To me, I don't understand it. My puny X's and O's mind cannot wrap my mind around how you can be so effective from 20 to 20, but when things get down there, things get tight. It just seems to be a little funky for the 2022 Raiders.
Yeah, because you're too predictable. I mean, the question that I've asked everybody is, where has this offense gone wrong this year? And the answer to that, above and beyond everything, has been the play calling on offenses at times has been very predictable. And if you look early on in the game, what was happening, a lot of the jet sweep stuff that was working really well. Where was that in the second half? Why'd you get away from it? I didn't like, frankly, the play call, near the goal line where suddenly you've got Devontae. They rush to get up to the line. They've got Devontae back there instead of a fullback who they rush out to the right side of the line of scrimmage. Like they're lining them up wide where Devontae should have been. Like unnecessarily cute when you don't need to be, and then getting rid of the things that are working. It feels like the lack of focus on what they're trying to accomplish from a play calling standpoint. And then in the red zone, the guys that I've talked to around ESPN that played the game, that have the best understanding of the game, will tell you that before the snap, you have a really good idea of what they're doing. And in that amount of space, it's just harder. Like when you don't have Waller, you don't have Renfro, you don't have a bunch of guys that can make a huge difference in the red zone. It's just the plays aren't there. The play calling has got to be more creative inside the 20-yard line, since you can't just come in and impose your will.
And this is one that's interesting to me too, Fitz. And you know that I've been the old man, get off my lawn all year. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Good things tend to happen when you run the football. And the best thing that happens when you run the ball is you let Devontae and Derek cook off of that. Devontae had 3 targets in the second half. Derek threw for 11 yards in the second half. And I think this comes back to what you were saying about the play calling and the creativity. That first half, I would admit, I think there's an argument that was the most effectively creative we've seen Josh McDaniels in 2022. I think there's a difference between being creative and being really effective in that creativity. And Coach McDaniels was both of those things in the first half. But then something changes, and when we talk about the tangible, the momentum, the funkiness that this Raiders team has played through a lot of 2022, and I think a lot of that, all of a sudden manifests itself in your where is Devontae moment. Where is Devontae? How are you not getting the ball in his hands for a guy that was feasting for the first half, and then it feels like he kind of just goes away a little bit?
Well, and that's where these two stats come out, and before anybody reacts to them, let me explain for a second. Derek Carr, 2 for 7 for 11 yards, 1 interception in the second half. You mentioned that. Josh Jacobs, 9 carries, 41 yards. What's really significant to me is that the Raiders got 67 yards in the second half on 20 plays. This is where bad football stacks on bad football, because when you only run 20 plays in a half, you don't have a lot of stabs at it. You better be flawless in everything you're doing if you can't pick up some third downs and extend some drives. And then your defense is on the field as much as the Raiders defense was on the field in the second half. That's how you get to a method where you're only running 20 plays. Like 20 plays does not give you a shot at offensive rhythm. 20 plays doesn't give you a shot for touches. If you want to look at what this Raiders offense intends to do, you're talking about an offense that wants to be running 40 plays in a half, not 20. And when you're only running 20, how does anybody get any rhythm? So then it feels like you're desperately swinging at everything, and you're a yard short and a yard short, and all of a sudden your defense is back out on the field and they got nothing left in the tank. Like, complementary football means both sides helping both sides. Neither side was helping either side in the second half. And that's why you end up with the defense that just looks like they're out of gas on late in the game, and an offense that looks like it's out of rhythm.
I'm just looking at the numbers across the board here offensively, and I don't think anyone is going to pretend and tell you this was a pretty game of football, right? I mean, this was Thursday Night Football in a nutshell. The Raiders are 5 of 13 on third down. The Rams on the other side of things are 4 for 12 on third down. Like, it was an ugly football game, but you talk about not getting your at-bats, specifically in that second half, and that was the Rams in the first half, right? They start the game, they go 3 and out, Baker Mayfield comes in for that second series, but they didn't get their at-bats, and that's exactly what happened to the Raiders in the second half. And I know we keep talking around and around and around, but it all comes back to this, is the Raiders had so many chances tonight, Fitz, to finish a game, to put the game away, to say, yes, we're going to have a nice, relaxing third quarter, fourth quarter, but it wasn't there. And I just wonder, how do you get to a place, and I know this might be a bit of a meta question as this game wrapped up 90 minutes ago or whatever it was, but like, how do you get to a place where you're comfortable finishing? Because I think the Raiders in 2022 have played good football for portions of games. Obviously, they've won 3 games in a row, so something was working. But that finishing, that final oomph just hasn't been there all year.
Well, and think about, like, I was getting blown up. I was on air at the time during the first half. I was getting blown up when people are like, where has this been all year? And it's been here the last 3 weeks. Like, this is what this offense has looked like. And to your point, I think there's a killer instinct that, certain guys bring to a culture. That's why the Bills went out and signed Von Miller, right? Like, they needed somebody that had been there, done that before, that knew how to close out these games. I mean, everybody, from the players to the coaching staff, everybody got out adjusted in the second half. Like, McVay came out with a better game plan on how to slow the Raiders down on both sides of the football, and it worked. And there was no answer for it. So, you got to look at that. Like, there are times where you're screaming. We're screaming it at the TV, and darn well the coaches are screaming it on the sideline. Make a play. Like, Harmon had the chance with the pick to make a play, but the penalty took it away. It looked like Crosby had made a play with the sack, but the penalty took it away. On offense, there are times, like in the first half, what we saw was Devontae was there, and you see 2 of the most beautiful passes too, like absolute dimes. But then you also, in the second half, when you're thinking, I just need somebody to step up and make a play, it's not there to be had. And the hardest part is that when the guy that we're really relying on most of the time to make a play is Josh Jacobs, and Josh is obviously banged up, and the tape on the hand, and he's dealing with so much to just try and play. It also takes, because of the nature of the running back position, you can't just make a play. You need everybody in front to at least give you a chance at a head start. So, like, the complication here is that it feels like early in the season, we talk so much about how it's different people making different mistakes at different times. Well, in the course of this game, it was different people letting their teammates down because they just couldn't make the play.
I mean, talk about Josh. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone on this roster that needs the mini bye week more than number 28. I mean, this dude is a warrior gutting through it. He finishes his evening 27 carries, 99 yards, just under 4 yards a pop and a touchdown. But, man, I think you said it perfectly. When you and I were texting through the game, you had one text that I think really nailed everything in one very nice, clean synopsis. It was, you have that incredible play from Derek to Devontae, and then 2 minutes later, you have that pick in the end zone. And that's 2022 right there. It's these moments of incredible athletic excellence, for lack of a better term. Because what we have seen Devontae do the past couple weeks, I tweeted out, at some point, we all just need to sit back, relax, and kind of enjoy the moment that this man is providing us, because he is otherworldly. Like, we have seen all the tweets, all the angles that pick, that catch he got over Jalen Ramsey, where Ramsey's hand is literally in his face. Like, we have to appreciate what he's doing. But you have a moment of incredible excellence like that, and then literally 6 minutes later in real time, you have a scratch your head interception. Like, how were both of these the same offensive? Like, it's mind boggling. It really is.
And imagine being a coach in that situation. Like, because at the end of the day, it's some sort of a partnership. If a coach calls in the play and the players have to execute it. And what do you do when one drive you might get the best execution you've ever seen, and the next drive you get that moment where, whether it's because Carr makes a throw we shouldn't make, or whether it's because an offensive lineman bumps him while it's happening, either way, that whole thing was failed from the outset. And then you sit there and you scratch your head and you say, how does a veteran quarterback in that situation make that play? And that's what's maddening about this team, is that it just feels like at times you just got to do your job. And when you're trying to do too much, that's when you end up with weird situations that are just cursing this team. And I'll go all the way back to the beginning of the year when we saw, the weird fumbles from Hunter Renfrow. We're sitting there saying, well, that's not what we're used to seeing, to what we saw tonight when you're at the goal line and you just got to walk away with points. And instead you walk away with nothing. Like, at some point, everybody's got to get comfortable enough to just do their jobs. That's what happened over the last 3 weeks. And that's what worked so well. And then today, It just all flipped around in the third. It all flipped around in the last 5 minutes of a game. This was a game the Raiders had clearly won until the last 5 minutes of the game. And that's wild to see the season go from, according to our analytics people, a 20% a chance of the playoffs with the win to now a 4% chance of the playoffs. Like, stick a fork in the chance for the playoffs. Too many things would have to happen. The whole season changes on the last 5 minutes.
And you and I have talked about this a lot. Even over the course of the win streak, I think that there is a natural, you and I think have a pretty good pulse of the fan base, and everyone's going playoffs, and you and I both cautioned, said, hey, pump the brakes, not because the Raiders aren't playing a good brand of football, but because there's a lot of things that still have to happen. And I think that, I don't want to speak for the entire fan base, but it felt like there was a sentiment, at least on the Twitter, Fitz, that people were like, all right, the Raiders are going to waltz into SoFi. It's going to be another home game. They don't know who the quarterback's going to be, decimated team, yada, 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 and we're going to fly back 4 hours later with our 4th win in a row. And unfortunately, that was not the case today, but it is it's been wild to me, Fitz. We talk about the feast and famine of your 2022 Raiders, and that's what it's been. It's been moments of plenty, and then it's been moments of starvation, and it really hasn't. There's been no in between. And correct me if I'm wrong. Al can check this, I'm sure, but this is now we have another one-score game. The only exception being the Saints game and then the Texans game, right, Al? Are those the two? He's looking it up right now.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
Incredible, though.
Point,
incredible.
By the way, like, I talked to 3 different experts on radio today, and all 3 of the experts that have nothing to do with the Raiders said, when I was like, hey, am I going to feel good tonight? All of them were like, well, if you don't, then things went wildly wrong. You don't lose this game. Part of the definition of this year is that the Raiders didn't do the one thing they needed to do all year long, which is beat the teams you're capable of beating. When you're better, when you're capable of out-executing, when you step on the field and you know top to bottom that your roster is better than their roster in all the key ways, and this was one of those games, you got to learn how to win that game. Like, you got to go out and know how to stomp that opponent down in a way that leaves no doubt. And that's what teams like the Chiefs do week in and week. They win the games they're supposed to win. And I know every week is tough to win in the NFL, but the great teams find a way to do it. The Raiders reminded everybody that right now there's still growth that needs to happen with this team because you didn't win that time of game.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I will, I will try to add a little bit of context to all this, where Thursday night is such a crapshoot, right? Thursday night is weird. They're historically very bizarre games. Now, that doesn't make up for the lack of execution. That doesn't make up for the fact that you let a team go 98 yards on you with no timeouts, et cetera, et cetera. But Thursday night games, by nature, are just funky. They're weird. They always have a little extra something in them. And unfortunately, the Raiders were on the wrong side of that something tonight. But Fitz, one guy that I really feel kind of bad for in this whole scenario, one guy that won't get talked about nearly enough, and one guy that, because of the end of the game is going to all be erased. I think Chandler Jones had another really nice night at the office, man. He is, for all the grief that this guy took the first 2 months of the year, I mean, what he has done over the past, 5 days? I mean, impressive. No other way to say it. Really, really impressive. And I think that we have seen now what it looks like when both those edge rushers get rocking with him and Max. And, brother, it can be a lot of fun when it's right. And I know that it's going to be hard for people to hear about that given the current circumstances. But, I mean, give Chandler a lot of credit for what he's done over the past week.
Yeah, and frankly, the interior of the defensive line until late in the game played well. Perryman had a bunch of big we talked about well-timed blitzes last week. He had a bunch of them again this week. The little things that went right on Sunday went right again today. The big things went wrong. And that's just, again, it's going to come back to a historic meltdown in the last five. And I do mean historic meltdown. I mean, you said it earlier, the first time in 45 years that a team has driven 98 yards with no touchdown or no timeouts to score a touchdown to win a game. This was a historic meltdown. And you're right. Sometimes things just go that way. The hard part is that you lost your wiggle room. A long time ago, this team lost their wiggle room. And so now these sorts of games that you're like, man, Thursday night football is just weird. Well, unfortunately, because the Cardinals outcome was just weird, or because, pick and choose which meltdown this year has been weird. Now you've lost your wiggle room. And that's nobody's fault but this Raiders team, obviously. But if you're looking for building blocks, the building block is that it wouldn't take much for this season to look wildly different.
100%. And just real quick, Al has delivered on our information 3 games for the Raiders that were not one-score games. That would be Saints, Texans, and Broncos. But still, I mean, you look at the just at the pure statistical improbability of playing this many close games, and it's pretty wild. But I was just having this thought too, Fitz. So we have a department Slack channel that's pretty active on game days where we put in stats just to help, Peyton and the broadcast guys help, for us to kind of just gather all these really unique, fun things for us to either bring up or kind of reference back to during the course of the post game. And the stats channel was rocking early. I mean, incredible positive stats. Josh is doing this, Devontae is doing that. But over the course of the game, the stats get a little less friendly to the guys in silver and black. And then we talk about, like we said at the end, as you said, another historic kind of meltdown for this team. And it really is hard to kind of go down the route or the road of the Raiders weren't that far off in 2022 to having a drastically different story. And unfortunately, you are what you are in this league. You are what you earn, I should say. And the Raiders have now earned 5 wins and 8 losses. But man, I mean, it just goes to show you the people at the league office got to be incredibly happy because it just shows you how thin the margins are between being a really good competitive team and a team that's still trying to find its way a little bit.
But now we're back in the same situation we were in a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Like this team's going to have to figure out what it wants to fight for the next several weeks. They're going to have to figure out what they're playing for the next several weeks. Decisions about health, I think, would look wildly different for guys like Waller and Renfro that, may have the opportunity to come off injured reserve. Now the organization is going to have to figure out what risk they want to put guys at. I mean, I think this becomes much more that you and I have talked a few times about, like, well, this might be the one. I think this becomes probably the time that you look around and say, okay, now we're fighting for each other and we're fighting to be the best we can. And we're fighting to set a culture for next year. But that's not where this Raiders team thought they would be even 24 hours ago.
I think what's really hard about this one, Fitz, is depending on how this outcome goes, right? There's the good and the bad of playing on Thursday night. You play early on Thursday night and you win this game, and all of a sudden, right, you're looking to the weekend and you're really like, okay, let's see how this shakes out. We have a few more extra days to get healthy, but now it feels like the tone and tenor of that has completely changed, right? And I think
It got pointed out earlier. The Raiders were 6-7 last year, made the playoffs. If the Raiders had won this game, they'd be 6-7, and the whole fan base could have looked at it and been like, oh yeah, look at what we did last year. The playoffs are right there. Now, yeah, it took a lot to even get to that conversation, but 5-8 just is wildly different. I said coming into the year, I thought it would take 10 wins to get into the playoffs in the AFC, and that was going to be a stretch anyway, but I still believe it's going to take 10 wins to get into the playoffs in the AFC. So if you're the Raiders, you better hope that, you can write this quickly, and you better hope other people start stumbling because you just made everything even more difficult.
Well, Fitz, you have been incredibly generous with your time as we push past midnight on the East Coast. I just want to finish on this. One more, unfortunately not very happy stat for the old Silver and Black. The Raiders scored on their first 3 possessions tonight. After that, Fitz, buckle up, my friend. Red zone interception, 3 and out, 31-yard field goal, 3 and out, interception. Scene.
Out adjusted. Like that's just from every top to bottom. I believe they're going to look at that tape and say, how do we let that happen?
Yeah, and I think a lot of Raiders fans are going to be thinking the exact same thing, especially over the long weekend now. We have a long time to sit on this, a long time, unfortunately, to let this one just kind of fester. And not a lot of fun moments right now. But the beauty of it is Raiders still got a few left. Still got a few games on the old calendar. Sunday afternoon football now against the New England Patriots. No shortage of storylines there coming up in about 10 days. But Fitz, it was so good to see you. Unfortunately, this ends your run of, what is this, 4 in a row that we had you for?
4 in a row.
4 in a row?
Yeah, it was going to keep going, but now.
But you know what? I will say the Fitz record of 3-1 is pretty good. I'll take that.
About that.
I feel good about 3-1 too. And we'll see you.
I feel like we're bringing a little Christmas spirit.
Yeah, and we will see you before Christmas. We'll see you, I think whatever it is. My schedule is not good. What are we talking about? Christmas Eve. We'll see you Christmas Eve. Yep, we'll be there.
Do we wear Santa suits, like the whole thing?
I actually, okay, we'll end on a little cheery note. So I actually have, and I get a lot of compliments for it. I was gifted, gosh, this was maybe one of our last years in Oakland, and I don't know if they make them anymore. This this Raiders Raiders Christmas sweater that it lights up. It does the whole little sparkly doodad thing. And every time that I wear it, and admittedly I wear it only once or twice a year because I'm not one of those guys that's going to be rocking this in summer, especially in Vegas. But it gets a lot of compliments. I will wear it the next time that we see you. God only knows what you're going to be in.
I mean, I actually have an Oakland Raiders Christmas sweater of some sort. So, yeah, the assignment is – I think I have a Raiders Christmas hat, too. The assignment has been heard and accepted.
Love it. And I look forward to seeing you on Christmas Eve. I look forward to speaking with you before that. Give me some shameless plugs on the way out, Fitz. What college football shenanigans do you have going over the next couple of weeks? I can't imagine that you have a light load at the moment.
No, most of the digital work doesn't happen till after Christmas. So I've
fantastic.
got a little time where it's good. But I will shamelessly plug for everybody that hasn't heard, starting January 3rd.
Yes.
In Harry on ESPN Radio. So myself and Harry Douglas every day from noon to 3 on Sirius X Eastern, noon to 3 on Sirius XM Channel 80, ESPN Radio. You can also watch us in the ESPN app because we're pretty. So we'll be on simulcast inside the ESPN app, hanging out Harry Douglas Monday through Friday. So noon to 3, big deal. So super excited to rep my Raiders gear nonstop all the time in studio and wear everybody out no matter what the record is.
And I'm excited to see it. Cannot wait. It is going to be so much fun to see you in a new time slot, to hear you in a new time slot. And we will see you in a few weeks. So we end on a high note, Fitz. The Raiders didn't provide us a lot of positivity tonight, but you and I mustered some up. We found a little holiday cheer, and we soldier on. So, Freddie Paskal, my man Jason Fitz, Al, who's been doing phenomenal work, everyone else back in the control room, thank you. And we will see you guys in just about, 10 days, right? 10 or 11 days. Enjoy the mini-bye, and we will see you after the Patriots game for another edition of the Fifth Quarter presented by Twitch.